Hello and welcome to another video. So it's been a few days since I finished Words of Radiance and now I've just got to get to Edgedancer. So I took a little bit of a break before getting straight into it, but now I think it's about time to step out of reality again and go back into fantasy. So before getting into this book, all I really know is that it follows Lift, who was a character we read about in one chapter in Words of Radiance. She's an Edgedancer and she has the powers to kind of glide and so on. And I've heard from some people that she's their favourite character, so I'm excited to read about her. From the one chapter we did get, I did like her. She kind of reminded me a bit of Toph from Avatar, which is a good person to compare yourself to because she is one of my favourite characters in Avatar. Well, to be honest, every main character in Avatar is my favourite character. But yeah, that is a comparison that bodes well for Lift. So hopefully she follows in that vein and she's as good as people say. So I'll get straight into the book now and I'll give you a summary, a reaction, a review a little bit of every chapter after I finish it. So the prologue is the same as the chapter Lift had in Words of Radiance. So I didn't really read it all, I just kind of skipped it to the end to make sure it was the same chapter. But yeah, if you want to see my reaction to that, I might just add that in like a little clip of my reaction to that part in here, so you'll get that, and then I'll just jump straight into chapter 1, which is after that chapter. In the 9th interlude, we're introduced to Lift. Her personality is kind of like very confident, and the vibe I got from her was very much like Toph from Avatar. She's also got a spren who's made of vines, and her abilities are gliding, which means she can make parts of her body like slick, which means that she can glide through surfaces, and like if people try to grab her, she'll slip through their fingers. And her other ability is like regrowth, which means that she can kind of heal people and resurrect them as well. In this chapter, she's on a thieving mission with a bunch of people in Azir, and the situation in Azir so far is that the leader has been killed by Zeth, and the viziers are choosing a new person to rule. So while on this mission, the man who killed the healer from an interlude we had before is here as well, and he is trying to kill Lift. So the reason he says that he's trying to kill her is that he's trying to kill all the people with radiant abilities, because he thinks that if they do bad with them, they'll bring about the desolations, and he's just trying to stop that. So he asks the viziers to allow him to kill her because she's a thief, and then he goes after her and tries to kill her. But during this time, one of Lift's partners is killed, and she uses her regrowth abilities on him and resurrects him. So just as that man who Lift calls Darkness is about to kill her, the boy she resurrects ends up being named the new ruler of Azir, because the viziers think that if he can resurrect himself, maybe he'll be able to withstand the attacks from Zeth. So since he's become the new ruler, or as they call it, the Prime, he actually pardons Lift, so Darkness lets her go. By the end of the chapter, her partner becomes the new ruler of Azir, and Lift is going to be there to kind of help him, I guess. And another thing in this chapter, it mentions that Lift is an Edgedancer, which is the name of the kind of people with her abilities. I'm sure I've heard like a book of Brandon Sanderson's that's called Edgedancer. I need to look it up probably, but I don't know if that's set in this same world or if that's a separate kind of universe that's just about Edgedancers. But that's like the second kind of connection I've seen so far to another one of his books. Okay, so in chapter 1, Lift is with Wendell. She's actually leaving Azir. So Wendell's asking her, Wendell, by the way, is her spren, and Wendell's asking her why she's leaving because he said that she enjoyed it there. And she describes how she was there, they were treating her really nicely, they were asking her if she wanted to learn how to read and how to fit in more with those people, those kinds of people, the nobles over there. But she didn't want to do that, she wanted to leave. She gave some excuse to Wendell saying that the reason she wanted to leave is because she was scared they were going to eat her or something, which I'm sure she knows that's not true. Because at the end she says that she's more independent and she doesn't like being in kind of big groups or communities because she's scared that if she stays there too long, people are going to know her and she's going to have to kind of connect with them and she's going to be expected to do things for them. And it's clear that she's kind of a loner. That does make me like her a bit because to be honest, her character, I do like her, but there's certain moments where she's kind of a bit too kind of like zany and quirky, and it's kind of a bit, I guess it can be slightly annoying, but I don't think it was annoying. I think the ending, when she's kind of showing a bit more of her vulnerable side, showing that she doesn't want people to know her, that's making me like her more. And actually I like Wendell quite a lot. He's kind of, in Shadesmar, he's an artist, and he says how he was collecting the souls of chairs and making a huge collection of them for all the people to see. And I like him. He's kind of a nice guy. Well, I guess that description of him as an artist kind of kind of shows what kind of person he is. That's how I would describe him anyway. But yeah, I like him, and I like how he's paired with her, because he's always complaining that he wishes he was back there and he wishes he wasn't with Lift. But yeah, I like their relationship. And with Lift, I also kind of like her. There was a few things. Do you know how Lift's chapters, they're described as, she describes her powers as awesomeness, and she says she's going to start being awesome, and that word's kind of used a lot. And I don't know if that's going to be used throughout the whole book. That might get slightly annoying, but I don't think it's that annoying so far. But I'm going to see it might do. But yeah, I'm just starting to get a little bit into her and her story. So she's left Azir now, and at the end of the chapter, she kind of looks back at Azir and she's like, she prepares to say goodbye before she heads off to be on her own and do her own things. Okay, so in chapter 2, Lift has reached Yedor in Tashik, which is a city that's actually on the cover of the book. So it's described as this place where it was like a flat plain, and it was like stone, but with shard blades they'd cut out an entire city out of the ground. So it looks really cool in the cover, and the way it was described was really cool as well. Lift talks to Wendell while she's there, and they talk a little bit about shard blades and how Lift wants one because she knows Darkness has one, who was the guy that was trying to kill her, and who's also going around killing other people, trying to stop them from being a Knight's Radiance or something. Pretty much he's killing all the people that have any powers or are showing any powers, because he wants to stop the Knight's Radiance from coming. So Lift actually knows that he's in the city, and Wendell wonders if that's why she's come here, but she says that's not really why she came here. She says that the only reason she's come here is because she wants to try their pancakes, which I'm pretty sure is not true. I think she does kind of want to stop him, or at least learn more about what he's trying to do. We also learned that this book, or what we just read, is actually taking place around exactly the same time as the end of Words of Radiance. So we learn how Dalinar has given the command to all the other kingdoms of the other high storm that's coming the other way, and Lift says that Lift and Wendell both know that they're noticing shifts and changes in how the weeping is going, so they know that something is wrong. But Lift also says how the viziers in Azir are telling her friend, Gorks I think his name is, who's the emperor, who's the prime Aquasix or something in Azir, that it's all rubbish and that Dalinar doesn't know what he's talking about. But we obviously know that's true. But we also learn a little bit about Wendell and the Spren, and how his people, the Spren that he's part of, called the Cultivation Spren, didn't actually want to get involved or didn't really care about what was going on with all the Knight's Radiance and stuff. But that since the Windspren and the Cryptics were doing what they're doing with bonding with humans, the Cultivation Spren thought that they should do it as well. But yeah, that's where the chapter ends, and I guess we'll just carry on reading, because apparently Darkness is in this city, and I guess we're going to see Lift come across him at some point. So in chapter 3, we actually follow Hawka, which is somebody else, not Lift, obviously. And she's a guard in the immigration kind of office of Yedor in Tashik, and she's also from Azir, and she's talking to this person who's come to her to kind of come into the city, I guess, and he's got a bunch of grain, and she's kind of discussing how the whole process of it happening, and then suddenly Lift is there, and she's eating all the grain, and then she asks the prospective character Hawka if there's any pancakes, and she can smell the pancakes, and Lift kind of goes insane just trying to find the pancakes, and eventually finds them and eats them. The guards, including Hawker, try to stop her, but obviously they can't because she just slips through their fingers, and it was a pretty funny scene. I don't think anything major happened, but it was pretty fun. I liked reading it, and at the end of the chapter, well, the grain that was there by the other guy, the smuggler guy, it kind of it tipped over and landed in all the kind of where all the immigrants were kind of held, and the character Hawker could hear them cheering while the food came down to them. So maybe it was an accident, but maybe Lift deep down knew what she was doing. We don't know. We never really know with Lift, I guess, so far. Also, a little moment in this when the Hawker character, she was asking, we learned that she wants infused spheres from her kind of this other guard or the head officer or something. And obviously when I hear that she wants infused spheres over normal spheres, I'm thinking she's a Knight's Radiant, or she's got the powers and she wants to take the Stormlight. But apparently it's only to read at night. So that was a little funny moment, because Sanderson knows that we expect that moment to mean that somebody's a Knight's Radiant, but obviously that's not always the case. But yeah, unless of course it is going to be the case, but then we'll find out about that later. Another thing that happened in this chapter was we learn a little bit about the religion of the people in Tashik, which is that we only learn really one thing, is that they have a god and there's an enemy of their god, and to protect themselves from his sight, they kind of cover themselves from head to toe in clothing so that they don't show any part of themselves. And it kind of obviously reminded me of the cultures in our world that, you know, have people covering themselves for certain reasons. For this reason, I like learning this. It was pretty interesting. I also like how the cultures in this world all seem so different from each other. They're like very distinct, but they all still kind of have like a similar kind of vibe. Like it doesn't feel too out there. It still kind of feels like it connects, but it's also very different. And you can see all the kind of inspirations these various cultures have. Yeah, it's just I like how all these different governments work so differently to each other, and they're also kind of representations of various historical kind of governments and systems we've had in our world. So I like how all of that's kind of meshed into this one world. That's pretty cool. So in chapter 4, we're back with Lift, who's just run away from all the guards, and it turns out all the food that she ate, which was to gather up the stormlight she needed, which we know is because Lift can eat food and that's how she can gain Stormlight to use for her powers. But yeah, so all the food that she had eaten during that last chapter, that she wasted all of that while running away from the guard. So it pretty much turns out that was a complete waste of time. But Wendell does say to her that it was very generous of her to help those people that she gave the food to. But she denies it and she says that's not the reason she did it, which is what I thought in the last chapter. So we then learn a little bit more about the city and how the city is kind of cut into the ground and each house is kind of cut out from the rocks on the walls. So it's also got kind of like a system so that the water that comes in from the high storms is kind of drained out of the city, so all the people are protected. And I really actually like this the way this city is described. It's probably one of my favorite descriptions of like an architectural city in the series so far. Like I really like how it's described, and also kind of how the people, the clothing, like the robes that the people of the Tashik religion wear, and how they and then there's these other Arzish people who have all the patterns. I can actually properly imagine that in my head, and I thought it was really cool. We also hear a little bit about Wendell saying that he wishes he hadn't gone to Lift. He goes on and on about Lift's kind of like annoying traits, and he says that, oh man, I was a gardener in Shadesmar, why can't I go back there? I was respected there, and now I'm doing this. And then he also tells her that he kind of hopes he went to another person who they were thinking of sending him to, which is a shoemaker who would help children. And we know who that is. That I can't remember his name, but he was one of the perspective chapters in the Words of Radiance who got killed by darkness. So I guess it's lucky for Wendell that he didn't go to him. But then that started making me think, actually, I don't know, this might be a completely random thing to think about, but I was thinking that if Wendell had actually gone to that man and became his spren, and that man died, would that mean that Wendell would die? Because we know that when the Knight's Radiance unbond from the spren die. Or if the Knight's Radiance break the oath, the spren die. Because in the spren's kind of view, the spren dying means them losing consciousness. So I was thinking that, do you know how we always hear about how all the spren and the Stormfather and everyone says that no matter what happens, the spren will always die, that technically the humans will kill them. Maybe that's not just because they're going to break their oaths. Maybe that's just the fact that the humans are going to die eventually, and when they do die, they're going to take the spren down with them. So maybe that was something, I don't know, I started thinking about that, but maybe that was complete crap, but I don't know, but that was just what I started to think about. So at the end of chapter 4, Lift finds a book she thinks she can trade for more food, but then she realizes she can't, so she chucks it behind her, and it lands on a woman who screams, and then a guard sees Lift and says, "Did you just assault that woman?" And then he goes after her, and she's on another run from the guards again. You know, this part's also kind of reminding me of the beginning of Aladdin, when Aladdin's trying to steal the bread. I don't know, maybe it's just because it's like Lift is kind of a little bit like a street rat in a way, and also because the way this city is described does seem more like deserty and kind of Middle Eastern, like Aladdin's obviously set in. Yeah, so that's probably the only reason it kind of reminds me of that. But yeah, so why don't you guys tell me what your favorite cultures are so far in this world? For me, my favorite cultures, yeah, that's it, the Reshi Islands. Yeah, those people and their culture, that was really cool. I really like that. That's probably my favorite culture I've read about so far in the story. So yeah, go tell me what your guys' favorite culture is in the comments below. Chapter 5 is really short. It's literally just like about 3 pages and not even 3 full pages. But so far it's weirdly one of my favorite chapters in this book, maybe my favorite chapter in this book so far. We learned what the words were that Lift says to Wendell, her first words, which was, "I will remember those who have been forgotten." And that's kind of her mission a little bit so far, but she's thinking, how's this one little girl supposed to remember all the people in the world that have been forgotten? Then she started thinking about her mum, who we learn about earlier in the other chapter, that both her parents are dead. But well, knowing Lift, we don't know if that's exactly the full truth. She might just be lying to people, which would make sense with what she says later on. She says to Wendell, the reason she left Azir is that she really doesn't want people to know her. She doesn't want them to recognize her or feel like they're friends with her. And the main reason for that is because she says, I'll just read this part because I really like this part of the book. It's worse when they think they're your friend. Gorks, the viziers, they make assumptions. They think they know you, then they start to expect things of you. Then you have to be this person that everyone thinks you are, not the person you actually are. Now, I actually really like that part. That's actually my favorite part in this book so far, and it's really true as well. But yeah, I'm really liking how this chapter gives us more of a kind of in-depth look into who Lift is and what motivates her. And we also learned one other thing, which is that her homeland is actually at the Reshi Isles, which I just mentioned in the last chapter. In chapter 6, Lift meets this girl who she trades information with, which we also learned that in this city, trading information is kind of the thing of the people, like the main thing that they do. So she trades, I think, a handkerchief for some information where to find some food. And she learns that there's an orphanage that will give food to her. So she goes there, and then when she's outside the orphanage, she sees this woman come out of it, who I guess is one of the workers in the orphanage, and she's with a young boy, and she hugs him and then leaves him outside, which Lift realizes is actually her telling the kid that he's too old to live in the orphanage and be protected by them now. Okay, one thing I got wrong in this chapter was that the kid that Lift saw wasn't being dropped out of the orphanage. He was actually brought to the orphanage by his mother, and it was his mother who hugged him and left him there. So I was wrong about that. I guess I got a bit confused, but yeah, that's what actually happened, which is really sad, and Lift finds it really sad as well. But Lift's really young herself, so she doesn't really understand. Like, she's a bit naive towards the fact that that kind of stuff would have to happen. Like the woman that threw him outside, she can't take care of every single child. She has to kind of prioritize which ones to take care of. But yeah, so Lift is there, and the woman tells her that she'll give Lift 3 meals, and Lift can choose when she wants them. And Lift asks for a place to sleep, and the woman says that she can sleep on the stone benches. But then there's another man outside who talks to Lift, and he asks her like a question. He says to her that if you answer my question, then I'll give you some advice on how to get closer to that woman who owns the orphanage, to maybe get a bed to sleep on or something. And the man asks her a question of, which part of the body do you think you are? Are you the head that's always giving directions? Are you the hand that's always making others do work and stuff like that, pretty much? And then Lift gives a sarcastic reply, which doesn't necessarily mean much. And then she kind of just like tells the man that she's going to go away and that she's got an appointment. Also in this chapter, we learn just one thing that the man says to Lift, is that the woman who's working at the orphanage, she's in this business of trading spheres for other spheres. Now, Lift doesn't understand what that means or why they're doing that, but I'm guessing that means she's trading infused spheres for done spheres, which may mean that, it might be just for, reading lights and stuff like that. Or it could also mean that there is someone around here who's got surge binding powers, which could be somebody new, or it's darkness that we know about. In chapter 7, Lift follows Hawker and spies on her as she goes home. So it turns out Lift had actually planned on using her powers in public the way she had with Hawker, so that a report would be made about her, and so that she'd find a way to track down Darkness, which is exactly what happens. While she's watching and spying on Hawker, she sees that Darkness approaches her house and asks for the report on Lift. So the reason she did this is because she knew it would be too hard to find this one man in the whole city, but so it'd be better for her to get him to come to her. So the reason she also wanted to get to him is because she knows that Darkness is trying to go around killing the people that have powers like she does. And she knows that since he's here, there's going to be somebody in this city who has powers like her, who Darkness is going to try to kill. So not only does she want to save that person from dying because she wants to save the person, she wants somebody with powers like her to talk to kind of explain to her what this means for her, why she has these powers and what she's supposed to do about it. So at the end of the chapter, once Darkness is done talking to Hawker, Lift decides that she's going to follow Darkness. Now there were 2 points in this chapter that really made me like Lift a lot. There was at the start, there was a moment where she says how if you can decide how a person feels, you pretty much have control over them. But then she also says because of this, she doesn't let other people make her feel in any type of way, because she doesn't want that kind of control over her. So I really like this part, because not only is it true, but it kind of made me think, because I think I've always felt like that was true as well. Like if you can make somebody feel a certain way, like, you know, you have so much power over that person. You can control what they'd do or why they do certain things. But I was also wondering that when she was saying how she doesn't want other people to control how she feels because she wants control over herself, the truth of the matter is that nobody actually controls how you feel. It's always all in your head. Like, you decide how you're going to feel at any point. So even if somebody makes you feel a certain way, it's really you deciding to let yourself feel that way, which seems is what Lift is doing, and she's not letting other people control how she feels, which for this young girl is pretty profound. And the second part of this chapter that I really liked reading about was how she says she doesn't like to dream, or she tries not to dream, because in the dreams she's always either in a place that she wants to be but she'll never get to be in, or she'll be in a place that'll be terrible for her and she doesn't want to be in. I liked reading this because it's how she thinks, and I really like the way she thinks. It's really clever, and it's surprising for somebody like her who's so silly so much of the time to have these moments that are so smart. And even Wendell says something like this in this chapter. He says that, you know, he's always surprised by how stupid she can be, but also how smart she can be as well, which is something that's making me like her character quite a lot. Okay guys, that brings me to the end of part 1 of my read through of Edgedancer. So I started making this video in the morning and now it's night, and you can probably tell that by how tired I look. But I've read halfway through the book and I've only got half the book left, which I'm hopefully going to finish by tomorrow. So hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you don't know what I usually do on these type of videos, you probably know now that I go through every chapter and give you my summary and reaction and review to each one. So if you want to see me do that for the rest of the Stormlight Archive, then make sure to subscribe and stay tuned for many more videos. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.